I'm excited to share Bill as an exclusive sponsor of the Thrivecast. They have been sponsoring the Thrivecast for so long. Thank you, Bill. Our firm has been using Bill for over a decade now. We actually use it in all of our foundational CFO and controllership engagements. We have to turn all of our clients' financial processes digital, and we do that with Bill. And you can check out some webinars and blogs and even toolkits that I build with Bill to help in your firm. So thank you, Bill, for being a sponsor of the Thrivecast. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thrivecast, where we talk to people who run firms in ways that are creative. They know how to scale these firms, and they help us figure out how to do it too. So I'm really excited to have Chase Birky, that he's going to be on the show today. You probably know Chase if you follow him on LinkedIn. And if you don't, you should. I love his posts. So he started his career in public accounting at the Big Four, small boutique firms, before he actually founded his own really platform, Dark Horse CPAs, in 2019, and just pivoting to a firm, really a first-of-a-kind platform for CPAs. So really, he is serving accountants that are trying to run firms with the platform at Dark Horse. So he's always on the road. He's on the road today. So there's really not a home base for Chase. So we're gonna talk about these things. It's going to be really exciting. So I want to invite Chase to the show. So Chase Birky, thank you so much for joining us on the Thrivecast, man.
Thanks for having me, Jason. I'm really excited to be on this. I really love what you guys are doing out there. I think you guys are some of the most progressive thought leaders out there. So I'm in good company here.
Well, cool. Well, so are you. So this is going to be really a lot of fun. We're gonna learn a lot of things. So I know you travel around, you and your family travel around. So I asked you where your home base is, and you're like, I don't really have one. So like, where are you now, and how do you bring all your equipment with you and actually do a podcast show when you're on the road?
Yeah. So, I mean, whether you're asking, where do I live or where is our company based out of, it's always kind of a nuanced answer, right? Because we're a remote firm based in the cloud. We've got a couple physical offices in different markets, but generally we're remote, right? So headquarters is kind of the cloud. And then when it comes to my personal situation, we're bouncing around from families' homes to Airbnbs to hotels. Just if you looked at a heat map of where we've been, at least in North America, it's been pretty crazy over the last couple of months.
Well, do you try to, to do your work, do you try to stick to a certain type of place? Like if you're going to a hotel, is that a transitionary place to get to another city because you can't work as easily there? Or kind of what is some of the structure of how you think about work from anywhere culture?
Yeah, I think you got to know what the setup is anywhere you're going, right? So if we're going to a hotel room, my wife's in the exact same situation I am. So, we can't be at the same desk, talking over each other during meetings. So, it's about scoping out, as soon as we get there, where can she work? Where can I work? But if we're in the US, there's usually a WeWork around, and I'll just go there because I know I can get privacy there. And then my wife will usually, be at the Airbnb or the hotel room and figure it out there. So, you get used to it. I've got, my portable monitor that I live on. I need that second screen. But you just get used to unpacking and packing and finding quiet spaces.
Very cool. I love it. Well, so let's dive in, Chase. One thing I love about following you on LinkedIn is just the posts you write. I don't know. Do you have a thing for Big Four? Because when you're writing a lot of your long form LinkedIn posts, which are really good, it's typically about the Big Four. The Big Four has a lot of dysfunction. So I think, that's known. That's something that's known. So is that specific or really when we're talking about the profession, is it really just our profession in general, or is there a thing about the Big Four? Because I know you came out of the Big Four and kind of, so what was your experience with the Big Four that influences a lot of what you write about that part of our sector?
Yeah. And those posts are often punchy, which is, I guess, more of an Australian phrase I learned recently. But yes, punching up, towards the incumbents in a lot of those posts. But I really think the Big Four is just kind of the public accounting industry, to the max, maybe in the most observable ways. My experience at Deloitte, I was in audit, and that was my first job out of college. And, for me, it was an interesting time in life because, when you're leaving college and you're going into the workforce, you don't really know exactly what to expect or what's expected of you. You got to create your own routine. The schedule just isn't given to you, and you got to find your way through life, not just your job.
Yeah.
And so that was a tough transition, as I think it is for most folks. And I don't think a lot of people really, give themselves grace for how difficult of a transition that
For
is.
sure.
But, there's a lot of good aspects of just being, baptized by fire, so to speak, talking with CFOs and controllers who know so much more about you than you about accounting and also about their business, and trying to have an intelligent conversation, ask the right questions without looking like an idiot. There's a lot of skills you learn by being thrown into that environment. But what I really couldn't reconcile was that I respected and loved a lot of the people that I worked with. Not everyone, but most people. And at the same time, I actually hated my job. And I couldn't quite reconcile how, people that I felt such affinity for and, commonality with, working alongside them, I was just as miserable as I was. And I don't think I had words to articulate that until much later on. But, as I've thought about it, it really is a matter of the business model. It's good people, that are, high achievers, high functioning, tons of integrity, charismatic. You're being pushed through a system that, is all about the billable hours. You have to, if someone asks how high, you're to jump through a hoop, you got to ask how high, sort of thing. You just get put through the ringer, right? And the business model forces you to do some things that might feel out of integrity, or you're stretched so thin, maybe you're not as thoughtful in interactions as you wish you were. So that for me kind of started that, that fight against the business model. And I really think that that's, the core of the problem, that we face in public accounting is things that spawn from that business model. And we just knew there was a better way to do it.
Yeah, I think it's weird as when we hire people who go through a lot of the Big Four training, they really get amazing training. It's,
right.
It's mind blowing. I think I'm hearing you say that. It's like, the skills you learn in that is so incredible. But for certain people, they just run up against the business model. They're like, this feels wrong. A lot of it just doesn't make a lot of sense. But of course, Big Four, they're such big gorillas. There's really not a lot they can do to change. Some of them, like BDO and maybe EY, I don't know. You may know that they're trying some different structural models to more align with a lot of the ways a lot of us run. Like a corporate structure, CEOs, COOs, really start to run with a lot more visionary efficiency within those corporate models. So are some of those, are they changing now? Like, do you think they'll be successful changing their model since they're so big?
Time will tell, but BDO, I would definitely say I've noticed some things they've done that show that they're at least among the top 10, probably the most progressive in terms of understanding that shift in business model. They became a corporation and they have an ESOP that they
That's
instituted
right.
to be able to give equity at levels below partner, and I believe some liquidity opportunities within that, if I'm not mistaken. But either way, I think I think every firm is aware that there's a shift happening. Do I think the partnership model is going away? Absolutely not. But private equity, we know, is really coming into the fold in a major way, and they're pushing for more of a corporate structure, right? Whether or not that still remains, a partnership or becomes a corporation, the idea is that it's going to act more like a corporation, which shouldn't be a surprise to us. I mean, we should resemble the businesses we serve more so than we do, versus being, a collection of, partners that have created bureaucracy and red tape and, have stifled innovation, and have created, to be honest, less than ideal employment experiences as a result.
Yeah, really. Well, who stays? And I know I'm on the Big Four. That's going to set us up for the way you do things now as a platform through Dark Horse. But who stays at the Big Four and does make their way up to partner? Are those not innovative people, or why would somebody stay? I mean, it sounds like there's no way you could have stayed. You would have never been happy. Why do some people stay? Or what kind of person may stay and make it up to partner? That's really a subjective answer, I know, but I'm just curious what you think. Who doesn't leave?
Yeah. So it's the people that are very smart, very driven, willing to sacrifice a lot, to get there, maybe appreciates having somewhat of a plan laid out that, it's going to be really hard and a lot of work, but there's if A, then B, they're going to be hopefully become a partner.
I see.
And I think that's maybe more of the case in the Big Four and, maybe the top 50 firms. When you get to the smaller firms, there's politics, right? And so it could be a situation where it doesn't matter how good you are, that path to actually becoming a partner or taking over the business is nebulous and gets drawn out and has no clarity. And, there's a host of issues there. But I mean, specifically within the Big Four, I mean, there's enough of a formula that if you're just willing to put your head down and grind it out and, like I said, make some sacrifices, you can have a good life on the other side, right? But I don't think those partners typically are innovative by nature, because of the grooming process of what it takes to become a partner is not typically innovation centric, although there are national office, rotations and those sorts of things, but really you're just getting indoctrinated with, the status quo of the firm that is, right?
Okay. That makes sense. Okay. So really the draw of entrepreneurship, which can be a little bit of a chaotic life. Innovation is a foundation of entrepreneurship. Like, we're always having to make crap up anyway. As entrepreneurs, that's kind of required. I mean, sometimes you're good at that, sometimes you're not. So that makes sense. There is more structure in the path at a Big Four, and that there are some good things on the other side of that sacrifice. And so that makes sense, because there's sacrifice on the entrepreneurial side too. And I really want to talk about that too with you, because anybody who's done this a while has gone through personal related things. But before we do that, and we don't have to start, spend too much time on it, but I am interested in Dark Horse as the platform. And so, just what is the model? Maybe how would you, if a firm approached you and said, "Hey, let me be part of the Dark Horse platform," what do you tell them? What is the pitch to them? That would be really interesting.
Yeah. And so when we say platform, just because that's a word that a lot of people use and maybe interpret differently, for us, that means we built a firm and a marketplace, both with clients as well as accountants, that allow entrepreneurially minded CPAs, to build a practice from scratch or to scale an existing practice. So we've got an accelerator program that brings in experienced folks, with a minimum of 7 years of experience, through a program that gets them from scratch to six figures in a couple of months and kind of holds their hand along the way. There's a lot of coaching, a lot of development, so that's one way that folks become a principal in the firm. Another way is that they merge their firm in. So that's, really kind of the platform element is, it's not just about what we do internally, but we can add from the outside in that regard. But we're not a franchise. We are a C corporation. Everyone's a W-2 employee, but also a shareholder. And they run their own P&L within the firm. And so twice a month, we're looking at a cash basis P&L, looking at what their profit is. They're getting the majority of that. And then there's, percentages retained by the company for all of the stuff that, it pays for.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So Dark Horse is really a legal entity, and you can promote people up to kind of a partner level, or you can bring a firm in, but either way you do it, they're all coming into that legal entity. And your platform, and I'm saying all this so you can correct me, your platform is to really run just a lot of different firms so that they don't have to run things, right? Because running the operational side of a business is a lot. A service-based business is a lot. These are people who really want to serve clients and want to advise them well, but they want the operational support. Am I getting that right for Dark Horse?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to look at it, the core differentiator for us is that as a leadership in a corporate team, we're here to serve accountants. Our product, what we're in the business of is providing resources, technology, staffing, marketing, branding, all of the infrastructure and the things you need to run your practice, right? Because especially with small micro firms, you end up getting stretched really thin in the other areas that you have to pay attention to as a business owner, right? And so how much of your focus ends up going towards that versus, face time with your clients, some of the deep work, developing your team, it's a tall task. And then you throw those deadlines into the equation, and, CPA's propensity, at least when they first start out, to underprice and get scope wrong, and maybe some issues in recruiting the right sort of talent. There's just, it's such a multifaceted business and a complicated, service that we provide in a lot of ways. Really the whole orientation for us is if we can serve our CPAs and take as much off their plate as possible in terms of those other things so that they can focus on their clients, develop their team and grow their practice, that's going to serve all parties best.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. So let's say one firm that comes into Dark Horse is doing $1.5 million. Somebody else can come in doing, well, you may have limits. I don't know if they're doing 300,000 or something like that. The 1.5 million firm is going to need more team. The team become W-2 of the Dark Horse platform too, but it is their team. They're 100% dedicated to that firm. Do they help hire, or y'all help them hire? Or I guess you help them with everything, right? They need help with.
Yeah, and it's not like we find the candidate, place them, and send them on their way. It's not to that extent, right? But what we do offer is a brand that has a lot of clout with talent, opportunities for growth, opportunities to gain equity in the firm, to have a incentive based comp structure that aligns them with the principal that's hiring them, and really, maybe just the most obvious thing is it's hard for a lot of small firms to recruit a certain caliber of talent, because that caliber of talent is looking at, okay, what's my growth opportunities within this small firm? Are they progressive in technology? Like, is this going to be a good move for my career, even if I'm only here for a couple of years, right? And so when they look at Dark Horse, they know, okay, I'm going to be seeing, the bleeding edge of public accounting. So even if this doesn't work out, I'm going to learn a lot along the way, and this is going to be a good step in my career. So there's a lot of different, softer elements that really help attract that right type of person. It's not like we're, placing that person for them, but we're helping them with all those elements. We're helping them if they need, second opinion on an interview, whatever they need from us to help them get that right person installed, and then we're doing some, of the lifting on the onboarding, getting them familiar with the technology and making it so they're not just totally coming to that principle, knowing nothing.
Very cool. So you're the CEO of Dark Horse, and
Right.
your goal is to serve accountants. That's, as you and I have talked before, that's really kind of what you've said. Now, I probably would have thought Dark Horse is a different way to serve clients. So Chase Birky, the CEO of Dark Horse, is really focused on clients. But I think that's not right. You're focused on the profession and providing a place for the profession to thrive in a more creative and helpful way. It's the firms that come in that are focused on the clients. Like, did I say that right?
Yeah. I mean, I think another way to say it is that, your traditional firm is defining client service and then finding accountants to, deliver whatever that box is they've created. Um, Really, our focus is that, we know that if we can support folks in building the practice that they want, that the client service is going to follow, right? And that's not to say 100% of the time it's always great and 5-star and all that, right? We're human and things happen, right? But we know just based on our NPS scores compared to the average in the industry, we're doing far better to the tune of 2x, than the average public accounting firm in terms of that net promoter score from our clients. So, it just goes to show that, if you put the incentives in the right place, if you really support and care about, your people, that's going to translate to the client. So it's not to say we're not focused on the client. We just know that, getting that top-notch client service is a result of us deeply investing in the people who are providing that service.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I think I know it's still early to see what private equity is going to do to our profession. Some people are still wondering. I'm wondering too. But some people are like, hey, they see us as a great business. So that's one thing. They're like, these businesses, professional accounting firms don't go out of business, basically, depending on the economy. I mean, they struggle just like any business. So Dark Horse is really supporting kind of in the same private equity. I know brings some cash, and maybe they don't care about our profession maybe as much as you do because you're very invested in it. I don't know. But they see us as beneficial, and it sounds like Dark Horse is a platform also that's saying, no, these businesses are awesome businesses. They need a platform to help them run more innovatively, creatively, so that the owner can enjoy it, right? Because a lot of the work we do in professional firms, it's hard. Not all of it's enjoyable. It's just tough, especially when you lose team, you hire team, you train team. So I don't guess you're private equity, but you're another offering that's coming in going, the profession is awesome. We need more people to see how amazing it is. You're just allowing firms to run in a more enjoyable way. You think, is that true? Is that a message you would say to people in college that are trying to make a choice of accounting as a profession?
Yeah, 100%. On the private equity note, I think they look at our industry and they love the industry and the prospects and, the fact that it's recession resistant, if not proof in a lot of ways. But then they also see a lot of poorly run businesses, operating in that space. Right. And so that's the perfect combination for them, that there's opportunity to run a firm better in an industry that has all the, aspects that they want, and then start aggregating those firms, putting that operational model that they believe is better, and that's where they see the return, right? It's just, there's so much opportunity in the market and a lot of businesses operating within it, not very well. And that's true, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think they're right there.
Yeah. Okay. So do you like private equity, or kind of where do you stand if you were to make say publicly what you think about it?
Yeah. I mean, it's not binary for me. It's not like a love or hate or like or dislike. It's more just a recognition of they're here for a reason. And I think we just have to understand why that is. And that really is because we need to run better businesses, better firms within this industry. That's why they're here. They came, I think, 20-ish years ago and it didn't work out. Might be different this year. But there's positives and negatives. I think on the positive side of the ledger, they're bringing in a corporate model that, does provide equity at lower levels of the firm, operates more like, the companies that we serve as clients. On the negative side of the ledger, I think that the current partner group, a lot of times cashes out on what's been built over decades, if not a century, and they get a great payout and then they get, another chance every 5 to 7 years to get additional payouts. But, you got to think about what does that actually mean for future partners, because there's less of that pie to go around. There's probably less partner comp to increase EBITDA so that that stock is worth more, right? So there's a lot of assumptions baked into, is this truly going to be a win for future partners? I think it is totally a win for current partners, which is why those deals are easier to happen, right? Because the people who benefit from it, it's a great thing. It's a way to get liquidity in a way that they'd otherwise have to wait until they were 60-ish years old, retired, and then get paid out 2 times their salary over 10 years. Like, it's obvious why that's attractive, right? But there is a dark side to it. So, I don't look at it as all positive, all negative, but I do believe that what we're doing is a highly differentiated way, of achieving a lot of the same objectives and limiting as much of that downside as possible.
Okay. So Dark Horse is not bringing in cash equity, but you are bringing in an entity that can give equity in a sense. Really, what you're investing into this profession is, hey, there's a lot of things that are really hard, and we're going to support you on those things. So you're kind of approaching it not similarly to private equity, but you are offering something to this profession that is not offered to it when people just start firms on their own, which is really pretty cool. But just like every firm, Dark Horse, I'm sure went through some journeys. I really want to touch on some of those and kind of what's next toward the end, but I want to turn a little bit personal, if we can, because you and I are entrepreneurs, and that's an up and down life. It's not an easy. It is not an easy life. So that's you go through a lot of personal journeys to kind of commit to what it means actually, and especially when you didn't know what it meant when you started a firm. You're like, oh, this is tough. And so I know even through some of your personal journeys, there were, I've heard of some of those on other podcasts, and there were some come to Jesus moments for you, which we all have those. So I'm going to ask you to rat yourself out on your come to Jesus moments, kind of, and what happened, after the first few years of starting your practice. And I guess, some troubled times that kind of led you to where you are now. Can you talk through some of those darker, I don't know, what should I say, darker periods of life as you were coming into Dark Horse?
Yeah, that would be a fair way to put it. And just as maybe a bit of an aside, I think the blessing and the curse of being an entrepreneur is that you don't know what you're getting yourself into. And you have this maybe outsized belief that you'll just figure it out as it comes. So the beauty of that is that you don't suffer from paralysis by analysis and you just do it, right? The downside of that is you have no idea what the cost is on the other side. And there's obvious, financial ruin that's at stake, right? But what most people don't give enough stock to until they're in the middle of it is how much of a personal toll is this taking on me? Like, how is this affecting my physical and mental health? How is this affecting my relationships? When am I going to get out on the other side and not be so consumed and overwhelmed? It's a journey, and peaks and valleys, to put it mildly. For me, from a peak standpoint, I didn't really get into this knowing that I was going to actually start a firm. It was just, an abrupt departure from, a previous firm. And I had some clients that I needed to get filed, during the extension season. It was really all I was concerned about. Had to get some infrastructure set up as a result. And then before I knew it, I was getting referrals, and I was like, okay, well, this is actually a firm if I want it to be a firm. And I didn't have anything else in mind. So I was like, all right, well, let's just give this a go, and there's some powerful things that happened, in that process, just so much learning, so much experience, so much just understanding that I could do some of these things I didn't think I could do. And I was growing as much personally as I was professionally. And I was feeling that reward and that dopamine from doing good work for clients, them being happy, me getting paid. It's just like, this is awesome, and then, the agency you get in your life as a result of, you running, the shop. And so that was intoxicating, I guess, for me. And before I knew it, I was just continuing to search for that dopamine and, not saying no to clients, maybe not pricing correctly, not scoping correctly, just trying to be everything to everyone, which I think a lot of accountants can relate to, that we're a lot of type A people pleasers. And I'm no exception to that.
Totally. We all are that.
Right. Yeah. So, I just didn't realize how deep I was into it in terms of just being so myopically focused on, building this firm, that I was really ignoring a lot of important things that were happening around me. And, this really started to come to a head. This would have been back at the end of 2017. My wife lost someone who was significant in her life to suicide.
Oh, man. God.
Yeah. And didn't think I'd go here, especially in the morning.
Well,
but,
well, if you can go wherever you want, man, this is tough stuff.
No, this is where I need to be. I wasn't there emotionally for her at that point, because
you're busy.
I was, and beyond busy, I was overwhelmed. It was like anything that wasn't mission critical to the firm or to someone's life here and now. Like, if it wasn't a huge thing that I needed to handle, it was deferred and it was dismissed and minimized. So, I went through that tax season, breaking my back to, get through it, because, I was growing during the busiest times, which is kind of how it went back then. And, got to May, and my wife's like, I can't do this anymore, and it was, I was shocked. And that, was kind of the start of conversations, to put it mildly, that led to us separating for a number of months towards the end of 2018. And so she was overseas. She came back in January, and it was just kind of like, okay, I recognize that we've got to figure this out. And I'm just asking you to just get through this tax season, because I'm going to have a nervous breakdown if I'm trying to handle, this situation we're in and try to get through tax season. Like, I'm just going to break as a human. And so, we just made a pact that, while this was going on, we were just going to try to enjoy each other's company and, just try to, keep things light, but, focus on, the things that brought us together in the first place. And, we got to the end of tax season, and, by the grace of God, things were in a place that they could be repaired, where, heading into that tax season, it was like, okay, once I get to the other end of this, we're probably going to be setting up the mechanics for a divorce. And, I think that reset of just not being in that serious space, like we'd been in for almost a year at that point, was really what brought us back to the core of why we loved each other in the first place. And for me, it was super informative at that point. It's like, okay, I think this is going to work out, but what the hell am I doing with my life that got us to this point in the first place? Not to say it's all, a one-way street. Everyone has their contributions to a relationship, but I certainly wasn't pulling my weight. And so, I was also looking at my co-founder at that point, and he was definitely on the verge of burnout. And he was telling me, like, look, we got to figure something out, because I can't keep doing this. And I was like, I agree. And so I had been thinking about, just had these ideas during that tax season of, because I kind of knew like something's going to probably have to change at the end of this tax season. Like there's got to be a better way to do what I'm doing. And all of these ideas, were just kind of these one-off things. Like, I think there's something that I could connect between all these disparate ideas. And that led to actually a solo trip to San Luis Obispo in May of 2018. And I just put the pen to paper and tried to create cohesion out of those thoughts. And it ended up being, the skeleton of the business model of what Dark Horse is now. And so we went from that skeleton of a business model to hiring our first accelerator in July, so just a couple months later. And, I've kind of been building the airplane while in flight ever since.
Wow. So thank you for sharing all that.
Yeah.
That's tough.
I mean, the emotion, you can tell it's still raw because it was a significant, thing in my life. And, I think the more important point here too, beyond just my experience, is that, everyone has something like this, you don't often see it unless you're in a position like myself where I get to see all these CPAs who are building practices and see their struggles and their successes. But, I think when we look at some of the issues that the profession has, it's that journey being so difficult, and to be quite honest, people not always getting to the other side of it unscathed, and whether that's burnout, whether that's a divorce, it's what I saw when I came into Deloitte, that all the partners were either divorced or unmarried.
Wow. Wow.
Not entirely, but most. And it was kind of like, okay, well, this is just what it is, I guess, if you want to succeed here.
Yeah.
But it's, it's true that emotional cost, what you've built up in terms of, kind of a liability, to use an accounting metaphor on that side of the ledger, you don't realize until you're in it. So a big part of what we, aim to do as best we can with our principals, our CPAs, is helping them identify the things that, if they do A, B, or C, their D is going to happen. And, if they don't price correctly, if they don't scope correctly, if they don't set expectations well with clients, with themselves, with their families, we know how this ends, right? And it's just a matter of time before some very difficult to unwind situation pops up as a result.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, so let's take a quick emotional break for a sponsor, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. I'm excited to share Divvy as an exclusive sponsor of the Thrivecast. Unlike expense management, spend management from Divvy now lets us provide cards to our team members, apply budgets to those cards with preset levels up front for each team member. And as we've implemented spend management, we no longer have to deal with the messy receipts on the back end of our expense management process. Check out getdivvy.com, that's GETDIVVY.com, for more information on managing your funds and moving them to the front of your spend process. Okay, we're back. So Chase, sharing all that from your past, really, that's not foreign to people that are listening. They're all going through stuff. I've been through stuff personally, and this, the entrepreneurial journey has it just comes with that, right? It's all pretty embedded in all of your life. So it's really not just the entrepreneur walking through things. It's all of life, right? Partners, spouses, partners at home are all going through it. So really, Dark Horse, really, the platform has a lot of empathy for this profession, and that might be one thing that really differentiates you. I know private equity is helping our profession. Dark Horse is helping our profession, but you're doing it from a point of empathy. Really, I guess, saying to firms, hey, I know where this can lead. Watch out and be careful. And also, you can get care to fend off some of that if you come into a platform like Dark Horse. And, really, Thrival's kind of I mean, we have a lot of the same, values too. Dark Horse and Thrival. We've had Thrival members move on to the Dark Horse platform just with a lot of joy. We have some of your senior team inside of Thrival that are just crazy, amazing leaders. Pretty innovative people that you surround yourself with. So it's really cool to see, the heart of what Thrival and Dark Horse, and there's a lot of great, platforms and communities that really support our profession. But I'm just kind of summarizing, and then maybe you can summarize, is to say to firm entrepreneurs, you don't need to be alone in doing this. I mean, there is a high when you first start that year and you start getting clients. You're like, I can't believe people are choosing me. You fail to do strategic things like hire and price appropriately. Everybody makes those mistakes. And there is a high. There's a lot of adrenaline to it, but it really can wash over you. So I don't know. That's my summary is don't do it alone. There's tons of amazing communities, platform, people, thought leaders that actually have empathy for the entrepreneurial journey. And that's kind of how I'm summarizing what you shared. What's your summary? Kind of what's your message to the profession after all you've been through?
Yeah, I mean, this idea of not being alone, I think is a huge one, especially for the folks who, started a firm or are a partner in a small firm. We only can know so much about accounting and tax, right? As humans, there's just so much subject matter out there, so many jurisdictions, just so much, right? So it's like, a fraction of all of that because of whatever your experiences have been, right? And so there's a lot of power in community. That's a huge aspect for us at Dark Horse is, making that known before we hire anyone that if you're coming into Dark Horse, you've got to have the mindset of contribute first and consume second. Because if everyone has each other's, best interests at heart and is part of that conversation and is defaulting to, adding their insight or experience, then there's just so much more to go around, right? And it's not just about subject matter. It's about pricing. It's about, client issues. How do you navigate, just all of the stuff that comes up in both their practice and life, and so we need to lean on each other in a lot of ways because it doesn't matter how smart you are, you can still dig yourself into a very deep hole as a result of, not talking with your peers and just hearing yourself, talk about some of your issues. A lot of times just brings a lot of light, to what's actually happening. So that community is huge, and I would say that public accounting historically has been a very fragmented industry, but I love what I'm seeing in terms of, Thrival, groups like Realize, Future Firm Accelerate, Rootworks. There's a bunch out there. They're bringing accountants together, and it's just so needed because, again, we need people from the standpoint of what we don't know and second opinions and perspectives that are different than our own, just to be whole humans and the best practitioners.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's true about entrepreneurship, right? Technicians come into this business. We're technical by nature, but then we say this a lot. Doing tax returns is way different than running a business that does tax returns. Those are not the same thing, right? But we make a lot of those assumptions. I'm technically strong in tax. I'll do taxes for people for a living, and that's not how that works. So I know it sounds like, and I love how you view things. You're not binary, right? You're like, God, we all have different journeys, experiences. And it sounds like to really save your family, you needed to change professionally. How do people recognize, sometimes there's that other side. It's like, hey, family, you got to understand what it means to be committed as an entrepreneurial, somebody being an entrepreneur. Boy, that takes a lot of support from the family too. And, how does a family pivot too and go, okay, we have to embrace what this means the family has to support entrepreneurship too. And so there's really all those sides. And we've seen all of that, right? In the coaching and consulting we do, everybody a lot of people build these firms with their families. That is so common in our profession. Dads, grandfathers, parents, sisters, brothers. We've seen all family members involved in these firm building. So how do you address the family too and go, hey, you also have to recognize what it means to run a firm, what it means to grow it. How do you have those conversations?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, to be honest, because, as I was talking about before, a lot of times the entrepreneur, the individual that's starting the firm, doesn't know what they're getting themselves into fully. And so if they don't know that, the family sure as hell doesn't know that, and then might be blindsided at some point, once that firm runner has a realization of what this truly is, and then has to set expectations, with different members of the family. It's tough, right? Because that might not be what they thought they signed up for, right? Because it's maybe not what the firm runner thought they were signing up for. So I think it's a tough realization. It's a tough series of conversations, but there's got to be support both ways, right? It can't be a one-way street where you're saying, look, I need, you wife and you son, you daughter to do X, Y, and Z so that I can survive. Right. It's like, that's not fair. Right. It's more about, here's what I need from you all so that I can do this for you all. Right. So it's like, as long as there's understanding there, it's like, look, maybe, there's a couple nights in a week where you're not going to see much of me, but I'm going to be at your baseball game. I'm going to go on a trip with you. It doesn't have to be this thing where it's like 9 to 5. So I always have this amount of time. Like, things are fluid. It's not easy to set up a static schedule like that. It might be possible. I've never gotten to that point, but
I haven't. So
yeah. So, it's just really about, how can you make it such that people aren't disappointed constantly because they don't have their expectations set correctly? And how can you proactively make sure that you're, showing your love, in more ways than one, for those people, and whatever time you have is high quality, and, that you're making the most of it and not just about work while you're pretending to play Legos or whatever with yourself.
That's right. Yeah. It's just honestly, right, talking through those things, and having those honest conversations, which, it's recognizing we're not just technicians, we're people. We may be real nerds, on the tax side or something, but we still have hopes and fears, and boy, those come out pretty hard when you start running your own shop. It's like, oh my God, I am scared to death. And you start to not be able to hide that stuff, or you start drinking too much bourbon or whatever, however you respond to a lot of that stuff, it starts to pour out of your heart and soul sometimes. But there's a lot of good too. So I know we're listing a lot of hard things, but there's tons of amazing things. When you do it with other people, it really can be more special. You can get a lot more support. You can share a lot of those hard places and the empathy that needs to come from people who know what you're going through. So, well, cool. So as we're ending, kind of just a few more questions, I'd love to know, just some more practical questions about Dark Horse. Like, did you, how did it scale? Did you scale it too fast, too slow? Is it going the way you want? Like, those kind of things. Tell us kind of how it's gone up to this point.
Yeah. In terms of scaling, I guess I'm a bit in the fog of war still, right? So I'll probably have a more comprehensive answer years down the road.
Okay, we'll ask you 10 years from now.
Right. Let me try and reason my way through this. So I think that we've scaled about as much as we could, maybe even a little more than we should, while keeping the brand promise and what we need to be doing to support our CPAs. I think we're right kind of at that line of, being stretched too thin, with the external recruiting and activities versus, tending the nest. I think we've just been right at that edge there. So, yes, we could have scaled more, but it would have been at a huge cost. And if we scaled less, maybe we would have been able to give more attention to folks. But honestly, I think the other thing too is we've had a lot of learnings because we've had a lot more data points, a lot more people come through, and we've made more mistakes, as a result. And so our learning has accelerated, as a result of that. So, I think that we're probably somewhere in that realm of like what we should do for where we are wanting to go, because we're not trying to have this thing just be a small thing that's 125 people, and that's it. Not that that's wrong for any firm to just say this is the size I want to be. It's actually a great thing for us. We want to scale our impact, as we scale our business. So bringing more opportunities and more accountants, to just have a much better career in life. So you can't do that if you're thinking small. So that being said, 2024 is going to look quite a bit different than previous years, because it's not going to be that 2 to 2.5x growth year over year. We've broken a lot of things along the way that, we've just recognized, okay, we're at a size where we've got to rebuild some of this foundational, systems and processes, continue to reinvest, especially in some of the more original OG principles that, didn't get the, learnings, in the same way that we were able to share them with more current folks, making sure that, no one's left behind as much as possible. So it's really going to be a year of a lot more internal focus than external compared to previous years.
Well, that's how we do it, right? When we build businesses, right? We scale, we break stuff, we fix it, and we're highlighted to the fact of what we need to refocus on. That is just how you build a business. And so it feels bad sometimes. It feels like you're doing things wrong. You can feel beat up in this profession a lot, just because you can lose good people and wonder, what did I do wrong? Lose good clients. You can get fired by clients and go, I suck so bad. Why did I ever do this? So, man, there's just so much mental psychology, which we were talking about at our last Deeper Weekend, just the psychology you have to manage around the mental impact of the ups and downs of this. So it's really cool that you can just look at it and go, we haven't learned all we're going to learn. Nobody has, right? But man, in 10 years, we're gonna learn so much. Was it hard to move into it was hard for me to go, I gotta take a job. I gotta be the CEO of this firm. It needs me to do a job, right? And I need to get out of other people's lanes and things like that. Was that hard for you to go, I've got to be the CEO of this and stop just, I don't know, what were you stopping doing if you had to do that?
So in 2019, when it came to pivoting this business model, it was clear to me that, if I was going to actually do this, which to a certain extent I still feel like is boiling the ocean, I had to not be encumbered by client service, because ultimately, that ends up being a big drain on your energy and your time, and a lot of things that come up, when you're trying to get deep work done. So I just realized I can't wear that practitioner hat anymore. So I went into what I would say is a founder role, because we were a startup at that point with a totally new concept, which still we're really, I would say, the only ones doing what we're doing. So building a startup, put me into a founder hat, and then more recently, I think I've come to find that I need to shift that founder hat to the CEO hat, right? Because I recognized about 6 to 9 months ago that I was being very disruptive, and confusing people, trying to, break processes, rebuild them. It's like you get to a certain size and people just need a bit more stability, and you've got to be more of a sniper when it comes to what you're truly going to disrupt, and not just make your default mode. But this actually kind of goes back to another question you asked, about what, drives some of the things, that we know doesn't quite work well in the accounting industry. And I think a big element of that is, for a lot of firms, most firms, the partners, the folks who are running the firm, probably spend a disproportionate amount of time in client service and not enough time in leading the firm, in looking at strategic initiatives, making sure that they're making progress there, making sure that they're developing their people, and just all the things you do when you're focused on leading a firm versus serving clients. Not to say that, you shouldn't be serving clients, right? And it makes sense in a lot of firms, but I think you have to take a hard look at how much client service is too much, at the expense of bringing everyone else along with you.
Totally. I love it. Okay. Well, our last question. So what's next? Maybe you've already shared some of that, but is there one thing you're thinking about in the next, maybe next year or next 2 years? You're like, this is a thing we got to really work on.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of that, reorienting a focus from external to internal, focusing on our product, our people, and our processes. I want to build some service centers both here in the U.S. and also in the Philippines. And while that's not a novel concept per se, it is a way for us to be able to bring someone up in the ways that, we want them to work, with the technology we have and the, processes we have, so that our principals can then hire someone out of that service center and, just have a lot more hitting the ground running with that person. Because then it's just a matter of getting them up to speed with what's different about your practice, your clients, and all that.
Very cool.
Also looking at, continuing to build out a bit of a professional services hub for small businesses. We added private wealth this year, which
cool.
has been awesome. Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, we're not the first firm to do that because it's obvious. But I think our model allows us to do it in a very unique way that a lot of firms have trouble executing on. So, maybe that's insurance, maybe it's legal, to some extent. We're looking at how do we make this ecosystem more valuable for our CPAs and clients at the same time. Dark Horse as a name really came about because, we serve small businesses, and those small businesses are often dark horses against their larger competitors. But more importantly, they're often underserved. I'd say chronically underserved, because there's the one-off practitioners called small shops that, they might be doing a good job. A lot of times they're not. Or a big firm that is charging them a lot of money and constantly deprioritizing them. So there's just this need in the marketplace for, a higher level of support for these small businesses.
I love it. Yeah. Well, it's cool. It's just even seeing Dark Horse, you're like, this platform is allowing you to just easily add outsourced teams, private wealth, management, and who knows what else. It's pretty cool what a platform just brings in terms of power and support. And ultimately, I guess I keep hearing you say you want that to be more valuable for the clients that those firms are coming in and serving. So it's cool. Well, Chase, thanks for hanging out with us, man. I really appreciate you loving and caring about this profession like so many of us do. There's many of us that do love it. We see the value of it, and, we're a little sad that the labor markets, we're not seeing people come into it the way we would love them to come in. But maybe we can all change that, over time, I hope. So,
Totally. Well, I appreciate you having me on here, and more than anything, asking the real questions and, getting that out there. So
yeah,
I appreciate it.
Well, cool. All right. We're out of here. Thanks so much, Chase. Take care. We'll see you.